Hey guys, it's Alexis, aka The Sloth Reader, and I'm here today to do a video all about the very popular books that I personally did not like. I know that this is a pretty popular video to do on BookTube, and I've always wanted to do it because I love talking about unpopular opinions, but I was always kind of afraid because I'm a small channel, so, you know, I didn't want people to, like, not like me or something because of that. Of course, these are my own opinions, and just remember that we all live different lives, and we all have different reading tastes, and the way our lives have unfolded affect how we read and view things. So just because I didn't like a book doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you liking a book. I'm going to try to give specific reasons why I didn't like these books, to try to explain, you know, why they didn't mesh with me. It might just be a me thing, it might not be a book thing, so just keep that in mind. And there's quite a few on this list. I'm going to try not to ramble about them, so let's just go ahead and get into it. I'm going to go ahead and start with a big one, might as well get it out of the way, and that is the Qatar series by Sarah J. Maas. Now, as a caveat, I find myself falling out of love with Sarah J. Maas's books in general, but considering the fact that I'm willing to finish the Throne of Glass series does mean that, you know, at least I have some sort of connection to that series. I can't say the same for Qatar. I really didn't like this first book. It wasn't that I didn't like it, it was just I was so indifferent about it. I didn't connect to the characters, I didn't connect to the story, I didn't connect to the romance in it, and when I picked up Akamath, the second book, I found that continued. I recently talked in my May wrap-up about how I actually DNF'd Akamath. I gave it 220 pages and decided it's not a series for me, it's just not my thing. I'm indifferent about it, and I can't suffer through 600 pages without having an emotional connection to the characters, so this series is definitely a very, very popular and beloved one that just doesn't work for me. The next book I'm going to mention is All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven. I know that this is a it was really, really well beloved when it first came out. I think now it's kind of evened out in the amount of people who like and dislike it. When I originally finished it, I gave it 4 stars, and then I woke up the next morning and immediately dropped my rating down to 2 because I realized that I was just emotionally caught up in the contents of the story, and that's kind of where my problem with the story lies in. Of course, you've heard from other people that they don't like this series because the characters basically are walking iterations of their illnesses, and I agree with that. I also just don't like that I feel kind of manipulated by the story, by the like really emotional things that happen in the story. I don't really feel like they served a purpose other than to make me upset, and I'm kind of a little bitter about it. So yeah, that book just really, really didn't work for me, and the more I thought about it, the more I really started to see more and more flaws with it I just didn't like. The next one I'm going to mention is one I'm very vocal about my dislike for, and that is Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. This was a book I DNF'd. I got halfway through it, decided I was so angry with the content that I didn't want to read anymore, and so I stopped. My biggest problem with this book, obviously the horrendous amount of ableism in it, but also just the fact that none of the characters were likable in any capacity, and I like stories about unlikable people when they're presented as being unlikable. In this book it wasn't the case. I feel like we were just... Louisa was the main character was such a stupid main character, and everything she did was so dumb, but like we were supposed to just really like Louisa, and I didn't, because every decision she made was stupid. And there was an element in her backstory that's introduced halfway through the book, and it's meant to be like a heartstring puller for her character. I really disliked that. I hated how all of the characters in this book treated Will basically like he wasn't even a person. I just, no. No. The next one I'm gonna mention comes with like a furtherance of it. So I'm gonna mention Paper Towns by Dawn Green, also one of my least favorite books I've ever read in the entire world. I thought this book was pointless. I thought I just feel like it was stupid. I hate the idea of Margot Roth Spiegelman with like every ounce of my being, and I get it. I didn't misunderstand the point of the book. I get it that she's like, the whole point of the book is about Manny Pixie Dream Girls. I get it, but I just, like, the whole book I was just like, why does anyone give a care in the world about this girl? Especially you, Quentin. Why? Why would you even care? But I'm gonna further that by saying pretty much anything by John Green. I've only read that and The Fault in Our Stars, and The Fault in Our Stars was okay. I didn't love it like everybody else did, but I didn't dislike it. But I've pretty much decided that John Green as a writer isn't for me. His books aren't for me. I just think that his content and his characters just, I don't know. I just find myself very eye-rolling about all of it. The next one I'm going to mention is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. Also one of my least favorite books I've ever read, and I didn't even finish it. I don't know if I've actually talked on my channel about how much I disliked this book. I made it halfway through, decided I didn't want to read anymore, and stopped reading. The two biggest problems I felt I had with this book was that the main character was a douchebag. And I try not to use language like that on my channel, but it's the only word I can honestly use to describe Wade, the main character, is that literally for me he had no redeeming qualities. I didn't like anything about him. I didn't like his weird obsession with the love interest, and the fact that he like saved pictures of her on his computer really creeped me out. And there's another scene where he like does something else that I was like grossed out by and whatever. I also just think this book was really pretentious on every level, basically. Two of my greatest loves are the 80s and video games, which is what this book is a lot about. And I felt like both in the book were really pretentious. I felt like most of the 80s references that I read up until when I decided to stop reading were really obscure, which was like meant to be the point of the book, but it made it not fun for me because some of those references I definitely understood, and even some of those I didn't get, and I'm like an 80s nerd. So that, and then like some of the video game stuff was just like, okay. And I just felt like the whole book was just pretentious. And that was the vibe I got. I feel like the author was like talking down to me as a reader, and not about that. The next one I'm going to mention is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I've heard people describe this book as beautiful and like life-changing, and it definitely wasn't that for me. My biggest problem with this book is that I found it boring. I thought nothing happened. It alternates between two time periods, and the time period I was way more interested in, which is the post-apocalyptic setting, was less than the like past setting, which was boring and, you know, bounced all over the place. I just wasn't interested. And so the post-apocalyptic stuff I was hoping for was like less than half of the book, which is super disappointing for me. Also, the whole book is building up to this like one thing, and when that one thing happens, it was honestly the most anticlimactic moment I think I've ever read in a book. Like, it was over and I was like, wait, are you kidding me? So yeah, like I walked out of that book. I finished reading that book and I was just like, that's it? That's what everybody is freaking out about? I was like, what? I was like, that was snooze fest. I was like, nothing about that appealed to me, so yeah. So yeah, that one didn't work for me. And now we're going to get into the two that I think are most controversial. And so if you don't like people talking and dissing your faves, you should probably stop the video now, because I have a lot of thoughts. The first one I'm going to mention is the All for the Game Trilogy by Nora Sakavic. The first book is The Foxhole Court, which is what I will put up a picture of. I'm trying to be respectful to like people who do enjoy these books, because like, you know, we all get defensive about our faves, I get it. There's not anything I really like about these books. I made it through the first one and I read half of the second one before I knew this was just going to turn into me hate reading, and I was like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to waste my time, and so I stopped 50% of the way through the second book. To summarize the reasons I don't like them, the first is that I can tell that these books aren't written for people who like sports, because the sports part of the book is more of a, it's more of a background than an actual element. So they're like 5 or 6 pages that take place sports, and then it's other stuff. Nowhere in the first book does Nora Sakavic ever actually explain the rules, the regulations, the strategies, or the player responsibilities of XC, which is the sport that she's created. You know, she mentions that it's a cross between lacrosse and soccer, but she never really explains what about it is lacrosse and what about it is soccer, and why is it not just a subset of either one. And so I'm a person who likes sports. I enjoy watching sports. And so for me, I was like, no, wait, I want you to explain the rules to me. Please, I want to be able to understand the content. And a lot of the reviews I see on this book is people going, wow, I'm glad there wasn't a lot of sports stuff. I hate sports. And I'm like, yeah. So, the other thing is that I described it this way to my friends. I felt the characters were very confusing. I felt that they were really flip-floppy about a lot of stuff. They were confusing. It was just kind of really hard to be like, wait, what? Weren't you against said thing or something or other? This is how I described it to my friend. It felt like these weren't Nora Sakavic's characters. It felt like she was writing a fan fiction about someone else's characters. And so she really didn't have a firm understanding of who they were as characters, which sounds really harsh, but that's how I feel. And so just overall with the series, I think the writing is just not good. I think the world building and the character development is really weak. I never felt any connection to any of the characters. Some of them I outright really despised. And yeah, just that series is, I don't get it. I don't get why people are in love with it, because it's not redeemable for me at all. And the last series I'm going to mention is going to break a lot of hearts, and that is the Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. And by extension, we can probably go ahead and say the Mortal Instruments as well. The Infernal Devices for me was a series I really loved. I read the first 2 books, and then the second book happened. I loved the first book, and then the second book happened. And some stuff happened that literally made me grind my teeth. I was so angry. Okay, caveat. Tessa Gray, the main character, is one of my least favorite characters I've ever had to read about. Like, above and beyond, she's probably the character I hate the most. I despise everything about her. So, the fact that she's the protagonist of the series pretty much doomed it for me to never really like it. But in the second book, in Clockwork Prince, the things that she does and the choices she makes and how that sets off these actions for the rest of the series, just, oh. I hate it. I hate everything about it. It was, I do actually plan to read the third book because I have it on audiobook, but I have already spoiled the ending for myself, and I'm just, I'm so upset by everything. And I just, and so in saying that too, the Mortal Instruments, I loved the original trilogy, read the 4th book, went, why is this still happening? Chose not to read the 5th and 6th books, so I guess you could also put it on this list, but I don't dislike TMI anywhere near the same level that I dislike the Infernal Devices. And honestly, I would like him a lot better if Tessa Gray weren't the main character, because she sucks. She really, really, really sucks. Alright guys, so those were all the popular books I didn't like. Maybe I'll get dislikes on this video. I don't really get dislikes because I'm such a small booktuber, but that'd be interesting. Finally get to some dislikes on my videos. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Or if you liked it, you can give it a like instead. Shit, I promised myself I was never going to be one of those YouTubers. Damn it. Alright guys, so you should let me know down below what are some popular books or series that you didn't like. I'd love to hear your responses because I love unpopular opinions, and I'll see you guys soon with another video.